The rain poured relentlessly as Lila stood outside the glass doors of the luxury restaurant, her cheap dress soaked through. Inside, her ex-boyfriend Evan laughed, his arm around Clara, the woman he'd left her for. Lila's heart ached, but worse, he was walking toward her now, that smug smile she remembered all too well. "Still struggling, Lila?" he smirked, glancing at her faded shoes. "I told you dreams don't feed people." Before she could respond, a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out of a black car behind her. Alexander Kane, the billionaire CEO of a tech empire. She'd only seen him in magazines. But in that desperate moment, she turned to him, trembling. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Act like you love me, just for a minute." Evan scoffed. "Who's this, your imaginary boyfriend?" To everyone's shock, Alexander's hand gently found hers. "Imaginary?" he said, his deep voice steady. "She's the woman I came here for." Lila froze. His warmth steadied her shaking hands. For the first time in years, someone was standing up for her. Evan's smile vanished. "You're kidding, right?" Alexander looked down at Lila, then back at Evan. "No. But I'd say the joke's on the man who let her go." And just like that, the entire restaurant turned to watch the poor girl no one had noticed, now standing beside the most powerful man in the room. Lila couldn't breathe. Her heart pounded as Alexander's fingers laced through hers, firm yet gentle. He leaned closer, his tone calm but commanding. "You didn't tell me dinner was going to include your ex, sweetheart." Her throat went dry. "Sweetheart?" She blinked, unsure if this was real or a dream. Evan's jaw dropped, and whispers rippled through the restaurant. "Alexander Kane?" Evan stammered. "You mean the billionaire?" Alexander smiled faintly. "I see my reputation precedes me." He turned to Lila, brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. "You look beautiful tonight." It was an act. She knew it. But the way he said it, it didn't feel like one. Clara tugged at Evan's arm, but he was too busy gaping at the sight before him. "You expect me to believe you're dating her?" Alexander's eyes hardened. "Believe what you want. But maybe next time, you'll think twice before mocking someone who's worth more than all your arrogance combined." Lila stared up at him, stunned by his sudden protectiveness. He didn't even know her, yet he was shielding her like an old friend. As they turned to leave, Alexander placed his jacket over her shoulders. "You can stop shaking now," he murmured. "I'm not going to let anyone humiliate you tonight." Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. Lila finally found her voice. Why did you help me?" He looked at her with quiet sincerity. "Because I saw a woman drowning in pride and pain, and I know what it's like to pretend you're fine when the world's already written you off." For the first time in years, Lila's tears weren't from shame, but from the shock of someone's unexpected kindness. The car ride was silent except for the soft hum of the city. Lila sat stiffly beside Alexander in the back seat of his sleek black sedan. The scent of his cologne, clean, warm, expensive, filled the air. She clutched his jacket tighter around her shoulders, still unsure whether to thank him or apologize for dragging him into her chaos. Finally, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that. You don't even know me." Alexander glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You're right," he said. "But I recognize something in your eyes tonight, something I used to see in the mirror." She frowned softly. "What do you mean?" He turned his gaze to the rain-streaked window. "Before I had all this, I was invisible too. Poor, desperate, humiliated in front of people who said I'd never make it." His voice dipped lower. "So when I saw that man talking down to you, it felt personal." Lila's breath caught. The world saw Alexander Kane as a billionaire, a man untouchable. Yet sitting there, she saw the trace of a boy who'd been broken once too. The car stopped in front of her tiny apartment building. "Thank you," she said softly, handing back his jacket. "I'll never forget what you did." But Alexander shook his head. "Keep it," he said. "You might need it again someday." She smiled faintly. "For warmth?" He met her gaze. "No. for strength. And before she could reply, his driver pulled away, leaving her under the soft glow of the streetlight, his jacket still around her, her heart unexpectedly lighter than it had been in years. Inside, she whispered to herself, "Why would a man like him even care?" Little did she know, this wasn't the last time Alexander Kane would step into her life. 3 days later, Lila stood behind the counter of Bright Brew Cafe, her part-time job barely covering rent. The lunch rush had just ended, and she was wiping down tables when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up, and her heart nearly stopped. Alexander Kane. Again. He was dressed casually this time, no bodyguards, no expensive suit, just a man holding a laptop and looking like he belonged nowhere near her small, struggling cafe. "Mr. Kane?" she stuttered. "Alexander," he corrected gently, smiling. "You make a mean cappuccino here, or so I've heard." Her cheeks warmed. "You came here, for coffee?" "Partly," he said, eyes softening. "And partly to see how you were doing." Lila blinked, unsure what to say. He didn't owe her anything, yet he'd remembered her. Cared enough to check in. As she frothed the milk, she tried to act composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "I'm fine," she said. "Trying to get back on my feet." He nodded. "I might be able to help with that. My company's opening a charity division, focused on empowering women who've had a rough start." She froze mid-pour. "You mean, people like me?" "Exactly like you," he replied. "And I could use someone who understands what real struggle looks like." Lila's eyes widened. "Are you offering me a job?" He smiled faintly. "Consider it an opportunity. You don't owe me anything, Lila. Just don't stop believing in yourself." Her voice trembled. "Why do you keep helping me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because the world broke me once, and someone picked me up. I'm just returning the favor." And as he left, she realized something. Sometimes, kindness wasn't charity. It was recognition. One soul seeing another in the dark. Weeks turned into months, and Lila's life transformed in ways she never imagined. Working beside Alexander in his new foundation, she found purpose, and herself. She coordinated outreach programs, visited shelters, and began smiling again. But what confused her most was him. The man who once stepped in to save her pride had become her closest confidant. He'd listen, encourage, and challenge her to dream bigger. Yet every time their eyes met, something unspoken lingered between them, something deeper than gratitude. One evening, after a successful charity gala, they found themselves alone on the terrace. The city lights shimmered below, painting Alexander's face in gold. "You did great tonight," he said softly. "You've come a long way from that rainy night." Lila smiled. "Only because someone decided to play pretend for a stranger." Alexander stepped closer, his voice low. "It stopped being pretend a long time ago." Her breath hitched. "Alexander." He reached for her hand, just like that night outside the restaurant. "When you asked me to act like I loved you, I didn't know why I said yes. But now I do. Because I do love you, Lila. Not as an act. Not as a savior. Just as a man who found light again through you." Tears filled her eyes. "But I'm just..." He silenced her gently. "You're not just anything. You're the reason I believe kindness still changes people." And under the same sky that once witnessed her humiliation, Lila kissed him, no longer a poor girl begging to be loved, but a woman finally chosen for who she truly was. Because sometimes, a single act of compassion doesn't just heal the broken, it writes a new beginning for both hearts.